My book, this book, is available, will become available July 31st. It is on audio, it is on all the major media, ebooks, and all of those things. I suggest that for people around the world, it's in English for now, but it will at some point be in other languages as well, that this book will help and assist people to develop communication skills. Hello everybody, my name is John Brink and we are podcasting on the brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, oh, we know where Canada is. In British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then we know the big city called Vancouver. And so yes, and where are you, John, me? Well, we are 500 miles, or for a European friends, 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, in a place called Prince George. And Prince George is a beautiful community and a beautiful region, lots of forests, lots of lakes, and lots of friends, black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, foxes, wolves, you name it, we have them all. We call it paradise. So the reason for my podcast today is because it's an exciting day for me, because we will be releasing on July the 31st my 5th book, and the title of the book is $1 Billion Communication Skills. And the book is an exciting one for me, the one of 5 that I've already done, and it's about communication skills. And the reason that it is, there is nothing more important than being a good, effective communicator. And that's why I wrote it. That's why I refer to $1 billion communication skills, because every single one of them, and I refer to them in my book, the reason that they became as successful as they are is simply because they were very, very good communicators, either already from the beginning, in most cases that doesn't happen, but because of other things that they knew that in order for them to succeed in all the things that they did, they had to acquire the skills of becoming good communicators. So that means not only giving presentations, but in all circumstances, be effective on being responsive on your feet as well as questions occur, or making presentations, or in relationships, or in friendships, or if you want to build a career, to be a good communicator is extremely important. And that means is thinking well, and all of those other things, that how do you acquire these skills? In order to, for me, I believe I'm somewhat of an expert on it, is that I was born in 1940, so I'm nearly 85 years old actually, and I was born in northeastern Holland, where they speak dialect. And even in Holland, dialect in the northern eastern part, if I spoke dialect, they really would not understand me in the rest of Holland. And it was referred to somewhat as not being more or less farmers or lesser than most of the other people in Holland. And I say that respectful, but that's a fact. And at least that's how I felt, and many others. I had to acquire to speak High Dutch when I was drafted into the Air Force, which was mandatory at 18, and learned to speak High Dutch, but already had an accent, and most people said, oh, he's from there. So it became a challenge for me personally. The other part, in order for me to put all of this into perspective and saying that anybody in my mind can work towards becoming a more and a better and a more effective communicator, because if I can, anybody can. Let me add some more things to it. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And to the point where they said to my parents, what are we going to do with this guy? And so a lot of people said, or some people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. Fortunately, they didn't do that. So I started to work with my hands as a furniture maker in northeastern Holland. But I had a dream that the one dream was, because we were liberated during the Second World War when I was 5 years old by the Canadian Army. It made such an impression on me that I knew that as I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I did. When I was 24 years old, I left Holland to go to Canada, start from nothing, didn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. And started then here in Canada working as a cleanup man, then a lumber piler. But I had a dream, the second dream, to build my own lumber mill. And I did that. But in between, I started from the bottom, gradually, step by step, learned to speak the language more and more. And then already in a year and a half was a superintendent of one of the mills, then got involved in a small mill in the Yukon Territory. And for all those people that are not aware of it, the Yukon Territory, it's north of British Columbia, it's next to Alaska. And what I remember about the Yukon Territories, as I do about Holland, if people ask me, what is the weather in Holland like? I said, the rain is colder in the winter time than it is in the summer. In the Yukon, tongue-in-cheek obviously, in the Yukon Territory, it snows in July and you don't know if it is late or early. I've seen 62 below zero in the Yukon Territory, so a challenge to say the least. I went through all of that and then started my own company in July of 1975, Brink Forest Products, my mill, my lumber mill. The interesting part about it, obviously, that is 50 years ago, virtually this week. What allowed me to do that is first and foremost my experience in lumber manufacturing, and then the other part that played a big role in my life is that when I came here, I knew I wanted to start anew. I had a dream of pursuing the lumber industry and building my own mill, but again, I wanted to start from the bottom. So when I came off the bus here in Prince George in the summer of 1965, actually, 60 years ago, and close by, actually, I can still see from here the Greyhound station. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.74 and $25.47. But what I did have lots of attitude, passion, work ethic, and what will follow is success. I knew during the time that one of the challenges I had, I started off in the lumber business initially, but communications for me were always a challenge. I was conscientious about potentially my accent, not only Dutch, but then dialect that I spoke, even in Holland. And then the other part was confidence. And so for me to deal and interact with more than 3 people in my own organization, 3 or 4, but outside of my organization, I was not very good at it. And I describe that in my book. I go through that. And so through circumstances, I walked into a store here in 1990, and 1997, after I was here already for 32 years, and I picked up a book that had an amazing effect on my life. This is the actual book that I picked up, Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell. I had no idea what it was about. I still don't know why did I pick up this book. And as I opened the book, and this is the actual book, and I wrote in it actually, is that in Dutch, now I finally know who I am, and I dated it January 1997. The book was about ADHD. And the more I read about the book, the person that read it, or wrote it, Dr. Halliwell, wrote 18 books. Is known around the world for his knowledge about ADHD in particular, but also dyslexia, the ability to read and speak written text was difficult and a challenge for him. In spite of that, he wrote 18 books. He's a medical doctor, he is a professor, and he has an amazing amount of knowledge, in particular as it relates to ADHD and dyslexia. I found that I was also ADHD and has dyslexia. In spite of all of that, this is one of the things that changed my life. The other part that changed my life is in regards to communication skills, is in 1989, through circumstances coincidental, where I was invited by a friend to go with her to communication development skills. And it was to go to Toastmasters. Now, Toastmasters is well known around the world, mainly in North America, obviously, but for the last 30, 40 years there have been Toastmasters. Smaller groups usually, up to 25, 30 people, that in communities. If you from around the world put into your Google, tell me about Toastmasters, it will tell you. It's first and foremost about communication skills, but first and foremost about become a good listener. Secondly, is to speak on your feet, or to deal with issues as they evolve and then articulate an answer in a short format. So that was part of Toastmasters. And then the next one is develop communication skills and presentations, but also far beyond all of that. But I think the most important one is develop confidence in who you are and as to how do you deliver presentations or interact communicating. For me, I was in Toastmasters from 1990 to 2000. When I started in Toastmasters, I didn't really want to go there because I said, is anybody going to ask me any questions? He said, no, you just sit there and watch. Well, halfway through the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us about you. I said, oh my God, if I would have known that, I would have never gone there. I was probably, in all the thousands of people that I've seen in Toastmasters, I was in Toastmasters for 10 years, from all the way to the beginning to the highest level in Toastmasters is a distinguished Toastmaster. There is probably less than 1% or less than 0.5% probably of all the people that were in Toastmasters, tens of millions around the world. Less than 1% of them would reach or want to go that far, or don't need to go as far as they wanted to go, like me, to reach distinguished Toastmaster. It changed my life. And so the combination of that part and I wrote in the book, as I said before, when I saw this, I wrote it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, because it would infer that it is a mental disorder potentially. And so I wrote in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And it dates January 1997. From that point forward, in addition to then having done Toastmasters, already was in there for a number of years before, it gradually developed confidence. And then obviously I saw the book, and then I realized I was different. But for all those years before that, I wondered, who am I? Because I knew I was different and I did things different. And obviously, I was afraid in Holland, where things are very structured, that if at some point I would hope to have a family, at some point I needed a job or become an entrepreneur or present myself, the question would always, where are your diplomas? But I didn't have any diplomas. Hence, going to the dream of being liberated by the Canadian Army, the dream of going to Canada became reality. I always wanted to go there, and this became even more of a reason to start anew and then have the dream of building a mill, starting from the ground up with nothing. $25.47. But what I did have, attitude, passion, work ethic, and I still do that even now at 85. I still get up at 5:30 in the morning. I usually work 12, 13 hours a day, and I love it. Every day is to me a beautiful day, especially here in Canada and in North America. And so attitude, passion, work ethic. I get up at 5:30, always make my bed, and always think I'm late. The other part that I did, and that's why it is so important, that's why this book is so important. But in addition to this one, I wrote the first book that I started to write, is that after all of that and becoming more successful in business, people would say to me, hey, John, you should write a book about this. And so writing books is not easy, especially not for somebody like me. And so for about 20 years, I started writing a book, stop, and then all of that, until I was already in my 70s, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and then saying, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. And I felt not so much that I wanted to make a fortune as an author or writing books, but more so is telling the story and give confidence to those that have struggled along the way like I did, and wondering, who am I? And believing always that things are possible. You can is always been part of my life. And although I had to go to the other side of the world to prove it to myself, and I did, is that now it became important to me to share with others. And there are so many that I've met that are challenged by neurodiversity issues or ADHD, dyslexia, or similar issues, that you can is still, for me, my operative. And I want to share that part with you. So I started then to write my first book in earnest, against all odds. So I started to tell the story, not how successful John is, but all the challenges along the way. That's the purpose of this book. And I wanted to share that with others. The interesting part that you may find is that the price of the book I put on there is $25.47, and obviously that relates to this. That's what I had in my pocket when I came off the Greyhound bus here in Prince George, in July of 1965. And I do that with all my books. So this one is important for that purpose, and saying that virtually having gone through all of this, meaning growing up during the war years, seeing far too much that we should not have seen, still affected by PTSD from the war years, seeing too much, the fear of losing my parent. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time they saw him was in the bombing of Rotterdam. And for 5 years, my mom on her own had to raise 3 kids. We used to, in 1944, during the hunger period in Holland, we as kids would, every morning we would go with gunny sacks into the railroad yard, pick up anything edible or burnable. The reason that we did, because they wouldn't shoot us, but they put us one, and the following day we'd be back. So the reason that I make that point is saying that challenges, I've seen challenges from all the time, going all the way back. Speaking dialect and all the challenges along the way. I loved speaking dialect, but learning to speak High Dutch, and then obviously the challenges in the schooling system, and then not realizing that ADHD then already was part of my life, because nobody knew. Nobody related to it. You were considered to be not able, not capable, and will not amount to much. And that was usually a common comment that was made if you were not successful in schooling. So therefore, I want to share this with others, that in a lot of cases, understanding that and the other things, to me, triggered me to start writing this book, Against All Odds, and saying that with all the challenges along the way, I stayed the course to become successful. Very successful book. The other part that I found important in my life is that as I discovered ADHD and started through this book to learn more about it, and then starting to look at Google about ADHD, what is it all about? And that period after, during the early 2000s, when there was not too much dialogue about it, but learning more and more about it. And then I came to the conclusion that in my mind, ADHD is and can be a superpower. It's not a liability, it's not a deficiency, but it can be. And so I felt I had to share more with the people in general, but especially considering that likely up to as many as between 25 and 30% of the population globally will be affected by AD or ADHD and potentially dyslexia or other things. Is do not allow it to become a deficiency. And the reason that I do the things that I do, and I do this podcast, is to give confidence to the people and to the younger people in particular, that they believe that this may be a liability and they will also not amount to much as they grow up. I say no. It can be, and it was for me, a superpower. And I wrote a book about that, ADHD Unlocked. And again, I felt it important to again say 2547 is important to me. It's not to make money for me. For me, is I have an obligation to share my story. And so that was the number 2. The third book I found what was important is that I probably heard it on a US radio station, is saying that most of the people, or 75% of the people that work in the United States, do not like their job. And 70% of the 75% are looking for another job. And I believe it is similar in Canada than it is in the United States. And I say, what I believe is important is to find your passion early in life. The sooner you know, you, and I say this respectfully, that are looking for what should be my career. I do a lot of presenting as well to high schools, colleges, universities. And a lot of times I talk to them and I say to a few people, I say, so what are you going to do when you're finished here in college, university, whatever it is? But they would say, I don't know. And I say, it's important to get an idea, what will I like to know, to do in the rest of my life, because it will, to make the right choice will affect everything that you do. Your future, obviously, but also for you as an individual to have enjoyment in the job that you do, or whatever it is, and for the people around you, and the families in your relationship. So I say, suggesting that if you want to be a truck driver, talk to truck drivers. They love talking to you. I'm interested in becoming a truck driver. So does that mean I should own the truck? Should it be a short haul, long haul, all those other things? Or should I become an entrepreneur in trucking and all of those things? Or you want to be a contractor. How about being a contractor? What does that involve? How about all of these in electricity, maybe plumbing or whatever, or a building contractor, and talk to them, because a lot of them would like to talk to people that are searching for what do I want to do as a career. So do that part. And then, even then, or you want to be a lawyer or an accountant or an entrepreneur, all of that is possible, but find out if you like that particular direction. And so I wrote a book about that, finding your passion, living the dream. And it would be a fair question to ask me, since I started working with my hands as in a furniture factory after I failed grade 7 the third time. I was 12 and a half years old, so I'm nearly 85 now. So you can say for 73 years, I've been working in the forest industry and started from the bottom up in a career, and saying, did you, John, are you living the dream after 73 years? I say, I am, every single day. And that's very, very important. The other part, again, in writing books for me became a passion, but also it gave me communication skills in a written form, not only in a spoken form. So between the books, being an in-demand presenter, and then also being obviously a podcaster, which is the new media around the world, is a passion to me and allows me to share and engage in different topics all over the different parts of the world. And the podcasting has been very successful. We're approaching 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and I love it, and this is just another part of it. The other part that is important to me is health and fitness, mental health, fitness, and then physical health. And so what I try to do is as soon as I wake up, in my case, and I'm not a doc, I simply can share with you my story, is I usually drink 10 ounces of water when I get up. That's what I do. I make my bed. First thing that I do, drink about 10 ounces of water. I'm not saying that everybody should do that at a quiet time, but drink lots of water is important. I sleep usually between 7 and 9 hours. And then I still going to work on a daily basis, virtually 5-6 days a week, and I still do that today, and that's important. And then the other part that's important to me is stay physically healthy as well. I go to the gym. It took me a while before I did. For a long time, I was just like everybody else. At the end of the year, we make a commitment. I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. And at the end, I'm going to buy a membership to the gym. And then 2 weeks later, we can find 100 reasons why we're too busy. I knew and from learning really that if I wanted to have quality of life and longevity, I had to be mentally, physically fit, and part of that is diet as well. So my wife is a vegetarian. I didn't always listen to her well, but when I started to look at this in a much more serious way, when I was about 70, so my diet is extremely important. And so I do that. I mainly eat greens. I'm very conscientious of processed foods. If I go to a grocery store, I usually walk through the outside of the grocery store. I do all the shopping, even for my wife. And I avoid the center aisles where there is processed food or super processed foods. And if the lettering is very, very small, we really don't know what is in it. And that part is important. And then I stay mentally active, physically active, go to the gym. Here's a picture of me. This is the 4th book that I wrote. And so I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And I still go to the gym. And this is still the way I look today. And so it's all about how to thrive, I say in the book, in your mid-80s. And so I'm 85. When I'm 86, I intend to go to the Arnold's. In 2017, 2018, I trained very, very hard, competed bodybuilding and physique, became 2nd in Northern BC, the same in the provincials, qualified me for the nationals and the Arnold's. Then COVID came, and now I'm still training. And in 1986 or 2026, that's where I want to go to the Arnold's again. And so, and then obviously what changed my life is all of that, and the story led me to probably one of the most important parts in my life. How do you become, because everybody that is successful and can be successful must understand that communication skills are critical in combination with self-confidence and knowing where you want to go and what you want to do. And so for me, mainly through circumstances, I ended up at Toastmasters, and then obviously discovered that I had the benefit of ADHD, and then came involved in becoming a speaker and a presenter, and then felt that this book was an important one to write about how to, even my own story, and then how can you become an effective communicator for the purposes of life in general, or in partnership, in relationships, entrepreneurship, or for that matter, as these 6 people that we refer to as billionaires, what made them successful? And what you will find, that it was communication skills first and foremost that made them successful. And so again, my book, this book, is available, will become available July 31st. It is on audio, it is on all the major media, ebooks, and all of those things. I suggest that for people around the world, it's in English for now, but it will at some point be in other languages as well, that this book will help and assist people to develop communication skills. At the end of the day, for all of my friends watching us from around the world, younger people in particular, that wonder, because of the educational system that we have, or the learning system, that is, it's time to make changes and understand better in terms of schooling, university, colleges, and all the other ones must review how effective are they in developing the new generation of skill sets that we need, take into account artificial intelligence, or AI, that will become a big part of our lives. What will it look like? Where are the opportunities? But the one thing for sure is that you must become a good communicator. The better your communication skills, the more chance of success that you will have. And all the other things, like in my case, where my formal education, I call it, were limited to grade 3 and 3 times grade 7, I started to learn more from that point forward. And if the people ask me, so John, tell me you had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then $25.47, and you had attitude, avoid negative, be positive, passion, find something that you will like to you become successful, but will follow, and work ethic. And a very critical point for me, at 5:30 in the morning, I wake up. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and I enjoy every single day. No matter how tough it is, I will enjoy it because I like what I'm doing, and attitude is so critically important. And we in North America are so fortunate, and for our friends watching around the world that would love to live in an environment like we do, give always back to your community, enjoy what you have, become good communicators, and read about others that went through the struggle all along the way. This presentation and my podcast is not about how successful John is. It's not about that. It's about giving encouragement to all those that have challenges, that, not using somewhat of a cliche, saying that if I can do it, anybody can do it, is a bit simplifying it. It's simply saying that become a believer, understand who you are. It took me a long, long time before I got to the point, who am I? This was the initial trigger that told me that ADHD and dyslexia. Did it stop me from being a successful business person? No, it didn't. I have 10 companies. I'm the sole owner of those companies. And we are still growing and expanding. It made me a writer, and I'm working on another book that hopefully will come out in the summer of 26, and saying that you can will become the title of that book. And so that's the story, that it is available to anybody. And whatever your dreams are, it does not have to be a business person, it does not have to mean becoming a billionaire, but finding that peace and confidence that whatever you are doing, you're doing well. Give back to your communities is another very important part. Become involved in it. Be supportive of people around you. Be sensitive to those that have challenges. And that is the opportunity of, in my belief, success. And then be aware of fitness in terms of, it's not about age, it's quality of life. Many of the people, the last decades in their lives, they are challenged. They have a handful of, and I'm not a doc and I'm not anti-medicine, but a lot of times toxic medicines become pills that people have a handful of them every, and they are not good and they are not healthy. Be aware of, be proactive in what you do, understand your body, and be kind to it, because you only got one of them. And that means mind, physical being, and exercise. So my suggestion is not necessarily becoming a bodybuilder and all of those things. That's not, or an Olympian. It is simply start with a sleep. 7 to 9 hours a night I sleep is important to me. And then the other one, I drink water 10 ounces a morning. It takes time to get used to it. And then the other part is be aware of what I do. I have, in my case, 4 boiled eggs in the morning and an avocado, half of one or something like that is important to me. I'm careful about lunch. I usually have a protein drink, go to the gym, and then in the evening I have more protein. But I'm very careful about the things that I eat. I'm very aware of my body, and then I stay fit and healthy, and saying at 85, I can still run a circle around most people. And the same, I'm not suggesting it is, but first and foremost, become aware of it. Gain self-confidence. Look forward to finding that passion. What direction should you go? It helps relationships. Stay positive. Attitude, meaning stay positive. Passion, find that what you like to do. Work ethic, and what will follow, whatever you pursue, is success. And wishing you all the best. If you like my suggestions, subscribe to my podcast. I love podcasting. I love social media as it is changing. Podcasting around the globe will become the media. We're still at the beginning, and I intend to, as long as I can, be part of it, sharing with others or podcasting about all kinds of different issues, including this ones. And so you've seen my book, the new one coming out July 31st, is Billionaire Communication Skills. Now, I cannot emphasize enough, a critical part of it is become a good, effective communicator, critically important. Thanks for listening.